Welcome to Cloud OnAir, live webinars from Google Cloud. We are hosting webinars every Tuesday. My name is Manju Devdas, and today I'll be talking along with Cisco about how AI enables enterprise digital transformation along with deeper customer insight. You can ask questions anytime on the platform, and we have Googlers on standby to answer them. Let's get started. So, shortly I'll be introducing some of my co-speakers, Sanjeev Patel and Vikram, and together we will be talking about how AI enables enterprises with digital transformation and deeper customer insight. Before that, let me give you a little bit of background about myself. I'm Manju Devdas, have worked for 17 years in predictive analytics. As technology has evolved, as computation and memory gets cheaper, the power of technology now used in analytics and decision making has now started to change transformation now started to transform businesses in ways that now has been classified as the fourth industrial revolution. And between myself and my co-speakers, will try to give you enough insights so that you can see why the industry looks at it that way with some real live enterprise examples. So, quick introduction about Pluto 7. We are Google's preferred partner when it comes to machine learning and AI expertise. It's not just about technology, it's also understanding business and driving business to change. That's the transformation in the retail, supply chain, and manufacturing. That's how the joint partnership between Google and Pluto 7 is helping many customers. Before we go into machine learning and AI, I'm sure a lot of you are reading about machine learning and AI, whether it's magazine, television, and so on. You're now talking with Google on Google's platform. Everything that Google does is machine learning and AI, be it Gmail, your YouTube, your photos, and so on. Now, what does that mean when you apply in an enterprise context? Let's try to simplify it a bit, right? So, if you look at simple decision making that happens in a human brain, it's really three simple things that happen. You gather information, you process the information, you make a judgment. The way you make a judgment about whether, what day it is, what should I wear, is no different from a process point of view in terms of how you make a decision in an enterprise. Remember, it's the same human being. What decisions you make at home and what decisions you make in enterprise, whether you talk in the context of the mimicking the brain's decision-making process, it's very similar, right? So now AI and machine learning is really mimicking that decision-making process. Now, when it comes to humans, we are biological creatures, so we have our limitations in terms of how we make decisions, our objectivity, and over a period of time, as we gain experience in our business or career, we build biases be it about demand planning, forecasting, supply planning, knowing our customers' experience. We build our belief what's a good market to go after, what's not a good market, what's a product that is profitable or not. And then we have our personal biases. In my industry experience, working with many customers, I've worked for, including Cisco, whom we will be listening to very soon. As a company, we have served companies like GE, Apple, Target, and many, many more. In my career, about 30 companies so that I've helped with business transformation, especially around forecast accuracy. I've found that 30% of forecast accuracy is pretty common in certain industries. And if you think about it, and when I really look at why that happens, it's got a lot to do with human bias. And now, when you start looking at the same thing from an evolution from a machine learning and AI standpoint, we are talking about still the same time series modeling. And with that, like how you make your decision, how you project what the weather is going to be, at what accuracy level, is the same methodology or approach that you take when it comes to making business decision. If you're making a time series decision, which is like commonly understood as regression analysis, you are applying those decisions around how much you're going to sell, which customer is interacting with you on your website, and so on. What's the propensity to buy? A lot of these kind of decisions Now you take the data and you blend that with your own ideologies, beliefs, emotions, and logic, and you come to conclusion. However, when it comes to machine learning and AI, we try to keep those biases away. Biases still play a role because data sometimes has embedded biases in them. However, what we do here is with machine learning and AI, we try to help enterprise make more and more decisions through objective data pattern analysis. That's the power of machine learning and AI. Now, when in my experience, I work with various customers, they want to automate their factories. They're looking at human traffic movement and various, including health devices and medical devices, human medical analysis, and so on. In this variety of industry that we serve, one thing that is common is data silos and complexity of decision making and volumes of decision making. These kind of are pretty common themes. And when you look at this, as the larger the enterprise that you get, many of you can relate that these data silos sometimes create its own challenges in your decision making. And when you do it at scale, now you have to structure your organizations differently, have people interact differently amongst them, and so on. All of this in the current world, when we look at it, I deal with a lot of retail companies. When you look at the bottom line KPIs and look at what's really happening in the business, this could lead to whether it's poor forecasting or excess or shortage of supply, or really not, even though they have a lot of data, not really understanding their customer well enough. We are living in the world of e-commerce, digital commerce, where companies like Amazon, Walmart.com, and Flipkart or Baidu and many, many more around the world are now talking about real-time knowing your customer, real-time analysis, real-time sentiment analysis. You take the same learnings and apply that in your enterprise context, you now have the same power when it comes to machine learning and AI on a Google Cloud platform. I run a lot of C-level executive workshops and presentations, helping them transform their business. Some of the common questions that we get asked is, hey, we hear about machine learning and AI, but how do I use that to understand or engage my customers better? What's the magic behind it, right? Does it really help my efficiencies go up? And so on, right? So there are a lot of questions in their mind. It's really about this paradigm shift, right? If you let humans make decisions, of course, humans use a lot of softwares and so on, but it may have proven that you have 60 to 80% accuracy. Now you look at shifting your KPIs, whether it's your sales performance or marketing performance or supply chain performance, to get to an accuracy that could not be imagined possible, right? Now, if you have, and sometimes when we walk into customer side, they say, we have all kinds of software, now what's really a big deal with machine learning and AI? To give you an analogy, if I ask this person on the left to carry 2,000 bricks and go up that building and put it in 1 hour, he would say, you're crazy, I'm not going to be able to carry that. But with a crane, you don't think that's a big deal. When it comes to decision making, simple decision making in an enterprise, it could be around processing invoice, or it could be around deciding which customer to run an email campaign on. When you do it through traditional means, you run into limitations on the left. You really need to now think about scale on the right? Even if I say 10,000 bricks, it doesn't matter, right? As in, that's the power that you get. That's the paradigm shift. Now again, it's easy for me to show you an analogy, but when it comes to enterprises, you have to think about how these machine learning gets embedded in different parts, doing simple tasks initially, right? So that humans can trust and interact and depend, whether it's a recommendation for upsell, cross-sell, or a recommendation to focus on certain set of customers. You have to make it part of your business. When we walk into customer site, sometimes innovation and machine learning goes hand in hand, and our customers ask, hey, how can I use machine learning and AI? So we have run into scenarios after scenarios where we improve the taste of beer, right? For one of the largest beer manufacturer in the world, right? Now that sounds magical, but if you look at the story behind it, it is really crunching massive amount of data, crunching the data, analyzing, and coming up with patterns. Similarly, when you beat forecast accuracy by 20%, it looks magical. It finds hard to believe, but once you double click and show how you do it, now you know that you've really started the journey of machine learning India into a new paradigm. Things like people get amazed. How does Amazon deliver exactly on the same day when they say, or Walmart do, and so on, right? The same kind of capability now you can enable in your ecosystem, in your enterprise. Now, that requires, of course, the innovative thinking. Then comes when you know your customers better, when you are able to understand the sentiments and analyze that better, how can you help the customer better through price adjustments? These are different innovations that our customers are thinking and acting on. Now, we have picked three of the most common scenarios here. Customer engagement, we'll talk a lot about it along with Cisco, and they have some very fascinating story as well as some great speakers coming up. Now, along with that, when you look at problems like forecast accuracy or preventive maintenance, it's really up to you how far can you imagine within your ecosystem. Take the most mundane task and translate that into an ML model. Understand this journey. And to drive home this point, today we are going to focus on customer engagement and really understand what does it mean to understand your customer better. How are your customers interacting? If the data is, you hear this story very often, data is the new oil. If you believe in that statement, and if you think about how Google internally operates, Google has the most amount of data practically in the world, and it's phenomenal how Google search engine works, or and so on, right? It's all powered by machine learning and AI in various forms, and now the same concepts can be extended into your enterprise. Think about how to use the power of your data in a centralized location where you can mine the insights and make decisions on behalf of humans better than humans in every regard. This is not about replacing humans. This is about empowering and making humans superhumans. So in the retail context, we are all used to this getting recommendations. Hey, you might like this shirt, or you might like this product, and so on. So, or when you're watching movies on Netflix, you watch this, so you might like that, right? In machine learning language, a simple classification problem, and sometimes it's a classification and a regression problem solved using TensorFlow hosted on Google Cloud ML with your data centralized in BigQuery. I just rolled out a simple solution for you on this verbally. It's really as simple as putting those Lego blocks together. With these kind of a simple architecture, now you can think of practically any amount of customer history, your reviews, sentiments, whether it's online reviews or what they're saying on Twitter or social media. You can centralize that without worrying about scale and capacity. When you start thinking about centralizing your information and now making your organization think differently, what's important for you to realize is that this is not a one-time project. It's a journey. And pretty soon you'll be listening from Sanjeev. The journey between myself and Sanjeev and Vikram started really with the conversation around why do you need to worry about all this infrastructure and so on. So there is, why not centralize the data, at least for your specific business problems? And let's start it there. With something as simple as that, to see them evolve is amazing. Cisco is a fantastic company with all kinds of complexity. And when you start getting into these kind of journey, it's very important that you select the right platform. Two, you blend the domain knowledge and expertise to really take the machine learning and put it into practical use. This is not a sci-fi project anymore for enterprises. And with all the experience that we have gained and we continue to gain around the world, what we are going to see in the next decade is bigger than the internet revolution. With that, I'm proud to bring on stage Cisco, who will walk you through their journey. And please welcome Sanjeev Patel, who leads the data sciences organization, as well as Vikram, who leads the machine learning and AI practice at Cisco. Sanjeev, Vikram.
Thanks, Manju. It's great to be here. As Manju said, I'm Sanjeev Patel. I lead a data science group that focused on the customer, partner, and sales experience.
And I'm Vikram. I'm technical lead for this particular program.
So today I want to talk to you about omnichannel and some of the challenges that we've had and how we've worked through those. And so I'll take you back to a few years ago when Vikram and I were thinking about ways to get our new customer success organization started. And what we noted is that in starting the customer success organization, we were opening up many new channels. And the challenge that we were having is that these channels were often disjointed from the other channels that we had. And potentially led to is customers could engage with certain channels and do that in a way that was completely separate from their experience in another channel. And what we recognize is that we really needed to tie the experience together from these different channels. Now, I'm guessing Cisco isn't alone there, right? It's probably a pretty common experience in most B2B companies because B2B companies have traditionally not focused on this aspect as much. And as the number of channels has exploded over recent years, and the desire to connect those channels has increased, as well as the desire of customers to have sort of more of a B2C experience in all of their interactions has increased. It's put a lot of pressure on companies to change. And so we recognized that we needed to do something that would allow us to bring the experience together in some way, and so that regardless of the channel the customer chose to engage with us through, they would have a consistent and personalized experience. What we really wanted to make sure it took place is that when a customer used a certain channel, that channel was able to interact with the customer in a way that considered all of the other interactions that that customer had with Cisco and brought the most amount of information back into that engagement so that it was an intelligent, personalized experience. And that leads me to a couple quotes that are, I think, very relevant. One talking about how important that customer experience has gotten to the point where it is even maybe more important than product and price as a differentiator. The other one being that AI is playing a bigger and bigger role in the customer experience. And that's certainly something that Vikram and I felt was the case when we kind of started this journey, and we knew that we needed to build something based on sort of an AI foundation. So that's what we want to share with you today. First, let me just describe some of the challenges that we sort of had as we were looking at the problem statement. So first, as I've mentioned already, we had sort of a desire to have an omni-channel experience that was connected, but we saw that there were certain silos. Not everything was fragmented, but there were certain silos that we needed to figure out how do we pull those back in as part of an overall experience. And by the way, that includes not only just digital channels, but it also includes sales channels, right? People who are engaging with customers and making sure that those people have the same type of interaction and that's consistent. The other one was sort of siloed campaign execution. And what I mean here is that as we would bring a channel online, there would be a team of people working to enable it, but sometimes they didn't have the right information from what was going on in other channels, and they were kind of optimizing for that particular channel. So that led to sort of a siloed approach. And that also led to a lot of kind of labor-intensive efforts as the people would try to ramp up a channel. They would try to gather data independently from other channels and bring that together. So as channels sort of grew linearly, we almost found that the number of people that were involved in supporting those channels grew exponentially, right? And we wanted to figure out a way that we could address that issue. Really kind of a core part of the issue for us was the scattered data issue. We weren't pulling all of this data from these different channel interactions, as well as new data that we wanted to include, such as customer interactions in our products, together in a way that could support the customer experience. And as a result, we didn't have the amount of insights that we wanted to, and we felt like we could do more around kind of the intelligence around those interactions to make them more useful to customers and improve their experience. So, what we recognized, as I mentioned, is we can't do this if we're going to build it effectively through just human decision making. It is too complex given the portfolio that Cisco has, the size of the company, the diversity of the types of customers, and their expectations around the experience that they would get. And so purely human decision making was not going to solve the problem. And what we felt like we really needed was a strategy that allowed us to sort of have a path to something scalable. And so there were three pillars of that strategy: connected data, connected intelligence, and then automation. And so I'll give you examples of each one of those in turn so you have a sense of what we're talking about. So the first one is around connecting data and getting it. And that's a pretty obvious point that it's important to get data. However, part of what I want to talk about is the way we were kind of gathering data and connecting it, which I think is the important part, and it's where the machine learning piece really relates. So we were inspired by some examples in the industry where they were using machine learning to connect data. One of the ones that I very specifically remember is around hospitals. So hospitals do a good job connecting data together using machine learning. It's not possible for them to match purely on social security numbers. Sometimes people make up social security numbers. It's not possible to match on just patient names. Sometimes those names are identical. And so they use machine learning as a way to make sure that the highest likelihood match is taking place, and they can do that very fast and scalably. Well, similarly, we decided to use that approach in connecting some of our customer data together. And so whether it was connecting sort of contacts back to accounts, whether it was actually connecting different channel data together from different groups that didn't traditionally fit together very well, or even doing kind of operational matching of data, we started to really embrace this approach of connecting data. And what we found is that it was three big advantages, right? One is it was much more accurate. This chart gives you a sense of sort of some of the accuracy that we found when we were comparing the human-based approach to the machine learning-based approach. It was also much more fast, right? So we were able to do this quickly within a matter of days as opposed to taking a lot longer than that. And it was very flexible to change. So as data changed, which changes pretty much constantly, you didn't have to go back through a human process to figure out how to deal with that change. You were actually able to adapt to that change very quickly. And so these were all big advantages. And the connecting the data became foundational to the intelligence work that we wanted to do. The other thing that we spent a lot of time doing is around understanding intent. And so I think, we're here at Google. Google does that really well with their search engine, right? If you go in and you type in the words letter C-A-L, Cal, into the Google search engine, Google knows that you're looking for the University of California at Berkeley, which is not intuitive to people who are outside of the United States. And the reason they know that is because millions of searches have been done in which intent has been established. Well, similarly, we started looking at problems that we could apply a similar type of logic to, and there are many of them. One of them is the fact that, at Cisco, we have a broad portfolio of products, and we tend to sell solutions to business customers. And those solutions are not just one specific product, they tend to be groups of products all sold together. And one of our problems was establishing when is a solution been sold to a customer that is kind of the same for two different customers. Meaning, customer A may have bought products A, B, C, and D. Customer B may have bought products E, F, G, and H, but they may be the same solution, right? And so how do we match those two as the same solution? So what we did is we looked at 5 million deals in which we looked at what customers had purchased, and we started looking at the groupings of those products, not just what was purchased, but then what do multiple people purchase when they're kind of purchasing from Cisco, and how do they kind of group together? And we were able to use that in a number of different ways. First, the grouping became an input into things like our models. It also became a good thing to augment feedback from product managers who were telling us how to look at solutions at Cisco. And we were able to use it in a number of other things as well. But this became sort of some foundational work we could do from a data side in preparation for the next step, which was the intelligence piece. So, next I want to talk about the scalable intelligence. And this is effectively what I'm going to go into is kind of the AI and machine learning aspect of things. The thing that I want to emphasize here is that there's really kind of two strategies that we had. One was around inbound. So when customers come to us, we want a way to kind of classify what their interest is, and we want a way to respond to it as automatically as possible and as intelligently as possible, taking into account all the information that we have about them through things like a chatbot or something like those types of mechanisms. We also, however, want to be able to route those inbound interactions to people. So if there are people who should be involved, we want the ability to do kind of the routing to the right person, and then we want the person to be enabled with the right set of priorities around how to respond to those and what to say in the interactions to be as successful as possible. So that's how we're thinking about our inbound kind of AI vision, if you will. From an outbound perspective, we want to be able to make sure that when we're pushing out things like emails to customers, we want to make sure that it's part of a journey. But that journey, what we want to be able to do is increasingly make that a data science driven journey, meaning that we are determining the right content, the right timing for that content, and the right sort of positioning in that content so that the customer ultimately is getting what they want, and we're making sure that we're engaging with that customer in a manner that makes sense for them, as opposed to it's kind of a generic journey for us. And so this development of sort of data science driven journeys is something that we're still working on and in the process of doing. So let me share a couple examples with you around sort of some of the things we're doing around AI and machine learning that I think may be interesting. So the first one is around Amazon, and Amazon predicts shopper interest based on their behavior, and this is kind of very well known. Everybody knows that Amazon does this. What I found interesting is that Amazon, Airbnb, and many different companies, right, Spotify, all describe how much of their revenue is actually based on their recommendation engine, and that's, I think, the kind of a fascinating thing in terms of how important these are. So, we built a recommendation engine as well, looking at kind of historical product purchasing behavior and what customers had in their installed base. And the thing that stands out to me, in addition to the ROI of the model, is just how many different places it's been deployed across Cisco. And so, from emails to display ads to online, even to sales recommendations, we're using it in a broad variety of ways so that we can get as much leverage out of it as possible. And think about what the importance of that is in terms of a consistent customer experience. Now you have numerous channels all having conversations with the customers and having similar upsell conversations and that sort of thing with customers. It's a great way to drive consistency. The other example is, and I'll use Google again, Google uses Google Maps and can provide sort of optimal routes for you. This optimization piece, well, that's a big piece of what we want to be able to do as well. And so one of the things that we have done is look at how we can use machine learning and AI to predict what the best channel to engage a customer is going to be. And so I mentioned that a little bit earlier in the inbound and outbound visions of how we're building our kind of AI roadmap. And so in this case, we're scoring customer engagement through a variety of different channels and effectively predicting how we should be engaging with that customer. So for example, in this case, if a customer has a very high email score, great, we'll use email. But if it's a low email score and something else is bigger, well, we probably won't email that customer because we know it's going to be effectively not valuable for that customer, and look to seek to engage them through other means. The last thing I want to talk about is automation. And automation is, I think, probably the hardest piece of this, which is how do you take those insights and how do you put them into these different channels so that they work? And so I'll describe sort of at a high level our approach to this. Effectively what we're doing is we have a group piloting as new channels are onboarded, piloting the use of these models, and then we have a group that's sort of operationalizing that. So I'll talk about that for just a brief moment. We've got effectively two groups, and I found that this is a really good practice for us. We've got one group, which is a global business team, that seeks to work with channel owners, understand what they're trying to accomplish, has the understanding of the models that we have, so they can bring it to the channel owner and give them options in terms of how they might want to engage with customers, and then comes back to us and provides, sometimes requests, sometimes asks requests for support, that sort of thing. And so frequently we use things, even something as basic as an Excel spreadsheet, just to get started and understand how we can serve the people in that channel better. Then we have sort of a deployment team that is made up of data engineers that's focused on automating that piece. So how do we get it in so that these human beings don't have to be involved in all of the process? That team that's working on the automation is also working on how do we drive a regular cadence of A/B testing and experimentation so we can make the engagement through that channel as robust as possible. So with that, I will hand it over to Vikram to talk about some of the ways that we're we're handling this from an infrastructure perspective.
Thank you, Sanjeev. And I will start with Jeff Bezos' comment. AI is a horizontal enabling layer, and there is no aspect of the business where AI cannot add the value. Now, going back to Sanjeev's point about what we are doing and how we are doing, when Sanjeev and I started to look at the vision into technical aspect, we started to lay down what does it mean from a technical requirement point of view. We had like hundreds of things, but I will just highlight 4 of them. First one was get more data. Second one is build as many models as we can. Third one is double down on our data points. Some of the data points that in B2B model we have not looked at it, like user behavior, user interactions. Some places we are good in the company, some places we are not. How do we make that as a practice, get that data to enable the better working models for our stakeholders? And the fourth thing is not only building the models, giving it to the users, but how do we drive that personalization that Sanjeev talked about? A real dynamic personalization where we can integrate these data science models or these AI techniques like NLG and chatbot that Sanjeev talked about in our real user experience across the different channels. We know that historically we always used to know where the customer was. Now what we want to know is where the customer will be, and what do we need to suggest to that customer? And if that customer is taking a different action, then dynamically change that recommendation. And by recommendation, it's not only product recommendation, it's about what we show them, what we want to bring to their attention, and what actions do we want to drive based on those interactions. So based on this requirements, when we looked at what do we really need technically to do those things, we needed an environment over our excellent environment within Cisco, which can scale for a lot of data, where the data ingestion and integration is easier. It's not too complicated. We have a dynamic way where we can generate this data science model and deploy them effectively. And fourth thing is, how can we put a microservices around this data science environments, which can provide the concurrent A/B test pre-built in it, so that this whole environment could come together and help our experience end to end. This was a complicated ask. We looked at multiple vendors, and then we decided to go with Google Cloud Platform. And we will continue to use our internal environment that we have, but we are going to supplement with this all trial experiment that Sanjeev mentioned on the Google environment and bring those learnings back in our experience, how we interact with our customers. And when I say customer, it's the real customers, our sellers, and our partners, all the 3 dimensions. If you look at our proposed our architecture that we are working towards, majority of these pieces are already in place. But like any other company, we have slow-moving, slow-changing data, which we call as reference information, and fast-paced data, which is transactional structure. And then we have a lot of data sources from our third party, from our application, where events are enabled. So when we looked at it, we tried to come up with different strategy of how to ingest these data points within Google Cloud. And we are using PubSub, we are using GCP as an activity, we are using the real-time data transfer as well, and putting that in the Google, so we can build those scalable models at a scale and enable them through microservices environment. So as Sanjeev talked about, we have implemented NLG. We are taking it to Google Cloud. We have all these data sources which we have already moved to Google Cloud, and we are working on Apache Beam, pretty much PubSub, to take these third-party events and bring into Google Cloud, so it can improve on our data science capabilities and enable that experience that we just talked about. If you are next generation firewall, ICE, and AM customer of Cisco, you can see that difference. Even now, we have already taken the first step. When you log into cisco.com, on those product pages, you will see those customization. And a lot of things are coming in future pretty soon as we are moving on this journey. With this, I would say there are a lot of things that we did, and some of the things in the Google Cloud as a POC which we did was sentiment analysis using Google's pre-built APIs. So Google provides an environment where we can analyze the phone call, we can analyze user behavior, we can analyze the sentiment based on what we are getting as a feedback from user. That provides us faster go-to-market and a capability where we can personalize and meet our objectives much faster. With this, that wraps our session. Stay tuned for Q&A, and we will be back in a minute. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for listening through the session so far. Yeah, we see some questions coming up, and we'll take a few of them. Between myself and Sanjeev, will tag team along to answer these. The first question is, do you need large amount of data to run AI predictions and recommendations model? How can smaller businesses and less customer data benefit from such models? As a general rule of thumb, yes, the larger the amount of data, the better. But there's no definitive measure on how much exactly you need. It's a blend of knowing your business, it's a blend of what you're trying to build in your model and what kind of insights you're trying to get. And is there enough pattern in the data? So these are some of 3 or 4 key aspects that you have to look at before judging whether you have enough data or not. In my experience working with various customers, worked with extremely large, literally like the Fortune 10, to the extremely small, which is like SMB. And interestingly, depending on the business urgency and need, both the spectrum of businesses use machine learning. And for example, online e-tailers, as they call, online retailers, extremely small business, but extremely fast in adopting machine learning with streaming data of customer reviews and so on. Other spectrum, the large enterprises also look for this because they have massive amount of data. So that's overall answer for that question. So Sanjay, you want to take the next question?
Yeah, so the next question is, what data elements is Cisco looking for to increase customer experience? So I'd say 2 big things come to mind, generally speaking. So one is data that comes from customer interactions. I mean, that should be pretty obvious, but let's take WeChat, which is getting bigger and bigger in China. So, as we're engaging with customers on WeChat, we really should have a way to make sure that that data is coming back into Cisco, and we're making sure that we're doing something with that data with the thought that that data should improve the experience and engagement in other channels, right? So that's one set of things. The other set of things is actually data from our products. So we collect a huge amount of data back from our products, and increasingly, as we're adding more and more products to our portfolio, especially in the software space, that's growing. So a big part of what we're trying to do is make sure that as that data is coming back, we can use that to improve the experience and to personalize it. If we know, for example, that customers are trying to implement certain features, for example, then we should be able to use that in a way to help them so they can get value from their products that much faster.
Okay, thanks, Sanjeev. So see the next question. This has 2-3 parts to it. How do we make sure companies are getting maximum revenue using AI from marketing perspective? How to validate the results and how to make sure you have the right data while training the model? This is a pretty loaded question. I'll have between myself and Sanjeev will answer this. First of all, ROI. Remember I mentioned early on that machine learning and AI projects are a journey and not a project. So keep that in mind. If I told you 15 years back, or rather in 1995, internet is going to change every aspect of your enterprise and the work, for most enterprises it would be pretty hard to imagine how that would be. And today nobody debates that. You have to keep that kind of perspective when you invest in machine learning and AI. Don't expect quick returns or magic here. There is no magic. And it's a collective learning of Google and many similar companies that is now available for you to learn. Now, when you build machine learning models to validate the result, keep one rule of thumb in mind. You're mimicking a human decision making. In other words, humans already make a lot of decisions sitting at the desk. If you take a business problem of forecasting, for example, how do you know that the machine learning is predicting better than you? You train the model, you evaluate the model. During the evaluation phase, check whether it's doing better than humans. Then you have your answer, right? And there's, as you go into building machine learning model, you'll understand this even better. And the last thing is, how do you make sure you have right data? There is this concept of clean data that you hear very often in enterprise. And fundamentally, I don't believe in clean data, right? As in, data exists the way they are. Imagine if Google were to sit and clean every single data that gets entered, they'll never be able to get you the results, right? With that perspective, I'm not saying don't clean the data. Data preparation takes 60 to 70% of time building machine learning models. But what more important is, don't try to make it perfect. Keep moving it along. Let the model run. Let the model also tell you a few things that you can improvise on. Sanjeev, do you want to add anything to it?
No, I totally agree with your perspective, actually, Manju. That's great.
All right. Great. You want to take the next one?
Sure. So the next question was, will the models that you're developing tell the humans or virtual sales in real time of who to target? And how does it improve conversion rate? So, another question that has many different aspects to it. I think what I'm honing in on is this word real time, right? So yes, the models will tell human beings whom to target. We are doing that already today. The real time piece is the one that we're working towards. So for example, let's say the best case scenario, Manju, you're a customer of Cisco's and you come to Facebook and you go, hey, I want to buy a Cisco router. I would love to put that in someone's hands right away. We're not at that point yet, right? So we're working towards how do we get things into the hands of salespeople as quickly as possible when we know that there are opportunities to do so. In terms of how does it improve conversion rate, we don't have a specific metrics around sort of how is conversion rate improved from before or after, but it's one of the things that we're looking at is just general at this point, anecdotal feedback from sales, right? Are they finding value in what we're providing them? Is it generally leading to sort of better outcomes or not? And so far the feedback has been very positive, so that's been great. And I'll take the last one as well.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so the last question is, how important is accuracy in the models that you're developing? And what are the ways to increase the accuracy of the propensity model? So that's a great question. And in fact, maybe the answer might be a little bit counterintuitive in that we are not overly concerned about accuracy in the models, at least initially, right? Our goal is to build models and put them out there and to learn from them. And so sometimes, a lot of focus is placed, especially when you're involved in something like Kaggle, right? Data science competitions. How do you improve the accuracy from 74.1 to 74.2? And that's a huge improvement. We don't operate in that kind of mindset. Our mindset is, let's build a model, let's put it out there, let's see how it does. Is it doing something that we think will advance the customer experience in some way? And then over time, iteratively, let's continue to improve it by getting more data, by refining the model itself, and finding out what works, right? That is the fastest way for us to be able to make kind of the roadmap that we talked about a reality. So that's how I would answer that question.
Great. Thanks, Sanjeev. And the last comment from us is, when you start the journey, start it in a small way, learn, experiment. Google will help you along with Pluto 7. You can conduct a workshop, build an initial model, and get started with the journey. And from there on, there's a lot of learning that comes into your enterprise. And have fun. Thanks, Sanjeev and Vikram. And with that, stay tuned for the next session, which is on From Hype to Value, how to start machine learning projects. A fun topic as well. Thank you.